Greetings to every family, every home, every individual watching us online. We hope that you are encouraged by the songs, by the word. And I believe that God still has something in store for us, prepared. He wants to speak to our hearts, and He wants us to open our hearts, as it was said in the beginning. It depends on us. Depends on us if we're going to be willing to receive what He has for us. The topic of my sermon is I named Strong Foundation, Unshakable Faith. Year 1957, two individuals who had a specific call placed by God Himself on their life. They had the same ministry. They had the same call. They were really close friends, preaching the gospel to stadiums, 30,000, 40,000, with great results. One, when faced with a crisis in his faith, said goodbye to God and abandoned his ministry. The other, on the other hand, he faced the crisis in his faith, came out with a stronger conviction, and became the world's renowned, famous evangelist, Billy Graham and Charles Templeton. It is no secret to any of us that some Christians will fall away from the faith. And most of us probably know someone who has fallen away. At one point, we were sitting in church shoulder to shoulder. We attended school together. We have been singing in choirs. We have went to youth camps. We have been working together, perhaps went on mission trips. But today, they're no longer with us. I'll be speaking to three different categories of people. Every single person will be tempted to quit at some point in their life. Second category, currently you are on the path of quitting on God. And third category, you already quit your faith. So let's go back to the first one. You are tempted to quit. Every single person, no matter when, but they will be tempted or tested to quit their faith. It is not a question of if, but rather when will this happen in your walk with God? This will happen. This is for certain. Sometimes this happens through the choices that we make in our life. Sometimes it is the sovereign plan of God that God puts us through, puts certain individuals in their life to go through difficult times, such as David and Joseph. David did not choose the path that God had for him. But after Samuel poured oil on his head and said, "You're going to be the next future king," for the next 13 years, he had to run for his life. He did not know that this was going to happen. And I sometimes think to myself, he was probably questioning, "Lord, did Samuel get the wrong address? Did he anoint the wrong brother in the family? Why is this happening?" And you know what? He would be justified, seems like, if he quit at that point. But he didn't. Joseph is another person. He had every reason to say, "God, why did you permit this happen to me? Why is this happening in my life? My brothers betrayed me. I'm in prison. What am I doing here?" But he didn't. He was strong to the very end. Second category of people, currently you are on a path of quitting. It is something that has enticed you, something that has taken you off the right path. And you You are no different on the outside from the true believers of Jesus Christ. You are still going to church. You are singing in choir. You are doing everything that the Christian people do, but on the inside you're broken, you're hurt, and you don't have this peace that you once enjoyed having in the past. You don't have the desire to read the Word. You pray occasionally. And at this point, you are starting to not go to church as often as you used to. Things are starting to change rapidly for you. And you don't have this desire to do what you used to do for the Lord. You're living a double standard life. You are 1 foot in the church and 1 foot in the world. And the third category of people, you have quit on God. Your faith has been shaken and you quit going to church altogether. You no longer pray, you no longer read the Word, you have just given up. Some things, idols, have taken the place of Jesus in your life. Doubt, skepticism, busyness, and other priorities have taken its place. It's not working for some reason. In the Bible, we find many examples why people quit serving the Lord. They had a great start. They have been faithful. But there they encountered some tests along the way, and they were tested. I want to turn our attention to Matthew chapter 24, verse 9 through 13. Jesus says the following, "Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved." Once again, verse 13. "But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved." Jesus himself is foretelling in the future that every single believer, they will be going through tribulations, they will be tempted, they will be tested in their lives. Whatever may happen, whatever comes into your life, he says, do not quit. Be faithful to the end. He will give us the strength. Now, the opposite of quitting is patience. Apostle Paul, he's talking about it in Galatians 5:22. He says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace." And that word, patience. Patience. Patience is the ability to remain under the pressure. It's that ability to go through the hardships. That's what patience is. The Bible gives us many accounts of men who were tempted to quit, but chose to be patient, chose to remain under during the times of difficulty. Now, I want to turn our attention to 3 temptations that come into the life of believers, true believers. And I want to look at individuals. You guys, is the PowerPoint working now? Okay. So first, I want to take a look at the life of Moses. He was burned out, or he was about to get a burnout. So the first reason, and the very first reason why most people quit on God is because of the burnout, the overload. We know the story about Moses. God sent him on a mission to Egypt to take the people and lead them into the promised land. And of course, as a leader, he had a lot of responsibilities. He didn't have any experience delegating to somebody do the less important work, that when he had to focus on more important work. Everything was upon his shoulders. Whenever there was a question, well, talk to Moses because he is speaking to the Lord. He has direct contact with him. So everybody that needed answers, they came to Moses. And we know that his father-in-law visits him. He looks at everything that's going on, how God is leading, pillar of cloud, pillar of fire at night, all the things that they're getting, the manna. But he says, you know what, Moses? I have been watching you for the past several days. You are sitting there judging people from early morning until late at night. That's not good. And he gives him a suggestion. Are you the only one, the wise person? Why don't you select somebody who is virtuous, who has honesty, who is well respected, who has the ability to judge? Let them do these small cases. And whenever something major comes, let them bring them over to you. And we know the story that Moses agreed. He said, great idea, let's give it a shot. So he trained, he did this. Dear friends, dear youth, a lot of the time we get overloaded. We have a lot of responsibilities. If you're going to high school, you're going to high school, college, university. On top of that, you have a job, sometimes part-time job. A lot of the time you have full-time job. I personally don't know how you can juggle full-time job. I've been in school as well. And I rarely worked even part-time because I know all the research papers, everything that you have to do for school, reading, reports, presentations. You got a lot on your plate. What about church? You have choir practices. If you're in a leadership position, you need to prepare, you need to plan, you need to do all these things. And there's so much going on. And there comes a point where you just want to give up. You talk to your pastor, you tell him that it's too much. I can't handle this anymore. We need to learn. We need to learn from the example of Moses and his father-in-law. He said, you need to learn to delegate. There are important things, and there are less important things that we have. We need to prioritize. And some of us are married, we have kids, wife. We need to spend time with our families as well. How do we balance? Throughout the history, great people, they have always struggled keeping this in balance. Church and life. Serving the Lord and life. And it's like this teeter-totter going back and forth. How do I do this? How do we do this? We need to learn to keep a healthy balance. We need to have this spiritual recharge on regular basis. We need to remain in the Word. We need to be able to, in order to give something to someone, we need to receive it first. We need to receive it first. Number 2, oftentimes people fall away from the Lord is because of overwhelmed by suffering. We know that Job had his faith deeply founded in the Lord his God. We know that he said at one point, I have made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully on a young girl. This was way, way back before the test came into his life. He was deeply rooted, and he knew that he was serving a living God. He knew he had the integrity before God and before people. But his wife, remember that she lost her wealth as well. She lost her children. She suffered too. And what did she tell Job? She said, why don't you just curse God and die? Her faith was not as deeply rooted as was the faith of Job. She did not. In a way, she was speaking what was on her heart, what she was experiencing. She was not deeply rooted like her husband was. When tragedies of life strike, people start to ask doubting questions. If God is such a good God, why does He permit famines? Why do children suffer? Why are there wars? Why are there famines? Why was there Holocaust? Why are there pestilences? Why is there pandemic? The list can go on and on and on. And you know what? That was the reason why Charles Templeton, the colleague of Billy Graham, that's why he quit and he became an atheist and he died an atheist. When he looked at the Holocaust, when he looked at all the videos showing these bodies piling up, he started to question if God is a living God. Why does He permit this? He looked at the images in Africa. Children are dying from malnutrition, no food. He questioned God and he said, I cannot comprehend with my mind. I cannot wrap this around with my mind that a loving God would allow this to happen. He wrestled with this for some time. He shared this with Billy Graham over and over, and he said, I cannot. And finally, he resigned from his church in Toronto, and he said, I don't believe in God. I cannot handle this. Even though he saw the results when he was ministering to these thousands of people, hundreds and thousands of people would come to the altar and receive Jesus into their hearts. He would see the transformation of these hearts. But when the test came into his life, he failed it. And I question why. Billy Graham, on the other hand, he said, God, I cannot put my mind around this. I do not understand. I cannot find the answers in your word. But I do trust you, and I put my trust on your word. I believe in your word. I make a decision. I choose to believe in your word. And his faith, as a result, was strengthened. And he continued to minister. He continued to minister to the lost people. And he finished his race well. Why? Why? How could he do this? Two people, great beginnings. One failed and one succeeded. A lot of you've seen a movie, God's Not Dead. A student by the name of Josh, he enters a class, philosophy class. And the first thing that professor says, to eliminate any questions right off the bat, I want you to write, God is dead. But there was one student in the class, he said, I don't believe in that. And the professor put him in a spot and he had to prove. So ultimately, it got to the point where the student said to the professor, why do you hate God so much? If He does not exist, how can you hate Him? How can you hate God if He doesn't exist? And it boiled down to one thing. When this professor was 12 years old, his mother was a genuine believer in Jesus Christ. And he, as a 12-year-old, he prayed to the Lord. And she was not healed. She died from cancer. And from that point on, he became an atheist. He became an atheist. He was not deeply rooted. His foundation was weak. And the thing is, most of the atheists, they are atheists because of the question, when they start to question why things happen around the world. That's the only reason. I have a neighbor by the name of Mike. He used to go to church on regular basis. He received Jesus into his heart, but there was a stumbling block. Something that pastor was doing, it did not add up in his mind. He cannot understand it. And from that point on, decades passed, he's not going to church anymore. Stumbling block. Where do I invest? What I mean by that, What am I concerned the most? Am I concerned on the outside, what people can see, the knowledge that I acquire so I can argue intelligently? What do I focus on? When we are following Jesus, it is absolutely essential that when we grow in knowledge, our spiritual walk or our heart grows in parallel. We can have a really big head, but at the same time, our heart could be very small. We're focusing what is on the outside, the house, the material things, even in church, the things that we do, but we neglect to work on our heart, on our character. You see, the foundation, it's something that's invisible. You can't see what's on the inside. On the outside, on the other hand, external, it's visible. People can do their assessment. They can praise. Just like that Pharisee when he was standing in the corner so that everybody can see. But on the inside, he was rotten. Dear friends, where do I invest? How do I read my Bible? Do I read my Bible so that I can have a bigger head? Or do I read the Word and I say, Lord, transform my wicked heart, transform my rottenness, transform my character, Lord. I need you. I need your grace for today. Strengthen me. What do I focus on? October 10th, 2018, Hurricane Michael was going in the direction of northeast through the Gulf of Mexico. And it landed on eastern Florida in the town called Mexico Beach. It was not a very big town. It was a small town. But 150-mile winds, they just swept through this town. And what you can see on that picture, most of the houses were completely destroyed to the foundation. Nothing stood. But there was one house that was standing like a beacon. The journalists, the reporters came, poured in from all over the nation and the world. They were questioning, how could this be? How could this be? And they were looking as if this house was built after the hurricane. They talked to the owner, and the owner simply said, well, there was a book, the codes for the Florida, specifically to withstand such storms. And we were going by the book, and we actually exceeded. We have gone way beyond that. The authorities said that we need to prepare for 150-mile winds and storm, but we have gone to 240 and 250 windstorms. Instead of putting 18 feet, these piles, this foundation, we have gone 28 feet. Instead of putting these luxurious things on the outside, the balconies, he said, we're not going to do this. We want to be ready for the storm if it does come. Even though in this area rarely came through. But when the day came on October the 18th, the house withstood the test. The house withstood the test. Dear friends, what am I building my foundation on? On something that's visible so that it can be really nice and everybody can be in awe looking at it? Or am I putting deep down into the foundation? Another interesting fact that I heard but I haven't verified is that when the skyscraper is built, 1/3 of the budget goes below the grade. It goes into the foundation. 1/3. Sometimes these skyscrapers, they cost billions of dollars to build, but 1/3 of the budget goes what people cannot see and they never think about it. What do I invest on? Number 3, why people step away from the Lord is that they get overwhelmed by temptation or by sin. A good example for us would be, we read when Apostle Paul talks about Demas. 3 times his name is mentioned, that he was ministering, he was a fellow co-worker. But Apostle Paul says that because he loved this world, he has deserted me and has gone to Thessalonica. This giant Paul, the spiritual father, who has been mentoring Demas, who has walked in the steps of Apostle Paul, Luke, and Mark. He has seen great miracles. He has seen great services, great revivals. He has seen it all. But when the testing came into his life, he was not able to withstand. He loved the sin. Another reason why people fall away from the Lord is the sin. Is the sin. Again, people cannot see it. On the outside, you might be going to church for some time, but as the time progresses, that sin eats away, and you cannot stand in worship because holiness and sin, they do not blend together, they do not come together, they do not stick. Pretty soon you're going to say, you stop going to prayer services on the weekdays. Then you quit going to youth services. Then you quit going to Sunday night services. Then you quit going to Sunday morning services. You occasionally visit on holidays. This happens. Sad to say, but sin keeps people away. No desire to read the word, no prayer. Sin has the power to take us out of the church. Sin has the power to take us out of the church. I'm going to come to a close. There was a lot more things that I wanted to address, but for the lack of time, I'm just going to have to close. When Jesus was in the final hours before his arrest, we know that he was in Gethsemane. He was coming to a close of his mission. He has done everything that the Father had in store for him. And he went and he prayed. He said, Father, in a sense, he said, Father, if there is another way, let it be. But not as I will, but as you will. We see that even the Son of God, Jesus Christ, he was tempted to quit. Just these final hours as they come right before the cross, right before the arrest, he was tempted. But he withstood. You know why? Because he had the relationship with the Father. Luke, he constantly reminds us that he was the man of prayer. The Son of God was in the flesh, in the body, but he had the fellowship with Jesus, with Father all the time. He had that relationship. He was deeply rooted. He was deeply rooted, and he withstood the test, and he came out victorious on the other side. Dear friend, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know if you are currently toying with sin like Samson was. You're on the path to quitting on God. I don't know that, but God knows that. If you genuinely come to him right now, he will restore you. He will heal your broken heart. He will bring the joy that you have lost. He will bring that peace. When you go to sleep at night, you will have this assurance that you are with him. He will restore you. He can restore you. Perhaps there is somebody listening and you have quit on God altogether. Perhaps it was the circumstances, the tragedy that hit your family or your health or something, and you are doubting God. You can come out victorious. You can come out victorious on the other side. And in conclusion, will you be like Paul's missionary companions and gospel authors like Mark and Luke, or who have stood faithfully to the end, or like Demas, who walks away? What will you choose? Will you be like Billy Graham, living a fruitful life, crossing the finish line? Or perhaps another Charles Templeton? You have a call of God upon your life, and He wants to use you. Perhaps you are like David, going through this desert. God is preparing your heart. He has a specific plan. He has a mission. He has a ministry for you. But you have to go through this desert in order to prepare your character, in order to prepare your heart. The people that are surrounding you, you think that they are going against you. God has placed you in such a position, in such a place, so that He can prepare you for this great ministry. God never promised that it's going to be a smooth sail, but He did promise that He will get us to a destination. How we lay our foundation, the investment we make into our spiritual construction, it will pay off. And as Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, stand firm to the end. Let's remember His words. We need to stand firm to the end. If we need support, we can ask somebody to pray for us. If we need support, we can just genuinely come like David did with broken heart and said, Lord, I have messed up. I don't want to live the way I live right now. I need your healing touch. And God is faithful. He will do it for you, because that's the reason why He sent Jesus on the cross to die for you. Let's pray.